The moment I saw the hotel receipt hidden inside my wife's planner, I understood that whatever was living in our house with me was no longer my wife. I didn't shout. I didn't confront her. I didn't even feel surprise. What I felt was something colder, heavier, like a switch being flipped somewhere behind my eyes. 16 years of marriage doesn't end with a scream. It ends with silence. With noticing details you were never meant to see. With realizing that the woman brushing her teeth next to you every night has been rehearsing a different life while you were asleep. My name is Daniel. I was 44 at the time, a systems engineer, the kind of guy people describe as reliable when they don't know what else to say. I fixed problems for a living. Networks, processes, broken things that needed patience and logic. I thought marriages worked the same way. Turns out some systems fail because they're being sabotaged from the inside. My wife, Rachel, was 41. Marketing executive. Confident. Sharp. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and quietly bend it around herself. People admired her. I did too. For years. Until admiration turned into something closer to vigilance, then confusion, then a low-grade dread I couldn't explain. It didn't start with betrayal. It started with distance. Subtle things. Her phone always face down. A laugh that didn't belong to me anymore. The way she'd look past me when I talked, like she was already late for something else. When I asked what was wrong, she'd say nothing. When I tried harder, she'd say I was suffocating her. When I backed off, she'd accuse me of not caring. I blamed myself. Of course I did. Men like me always do. I bought books, listened to podcasts, asked her what she needed. She said I should know. That answer alone should have told me everything. The irony is that I trusted the man she was cheating with more than anyone outside my family. His name was Michael. Her boss. Married. 2 kids. We had dinner together. Our children played together. He gave me advice about my marriage while sleeping with my wife. I remember nodding along, thinking he sounded wise, thinking he cared. The receipt was from a resort 3 hours away. 2 nights. Weekend dates that didn't line up with any work trips she'd mentioned. I sat in my car after finding it, hands on the steering wheel, heart steady in a way that scared me. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I started calculating. I checked our credit card statements. Her calendar. Old photos she'd posted, smiling in places she claimed she hated. I stopped asking questions and started watching. The truth doesn't hide well when you stop trying to protect it. One night, I lay next to her while she slept, her back turned to me, phone buzzing softly on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to anymore. I already knew. What shocked me wasn't that she was cheating. It was how easy it had been for her to lie to my face for so long without flinching. That's when I made a decision I would never take back. I wasn't going to confront her in my living room. I wasn't going to beg for honesty or closure or answers I already had. If she had built a secret life so carefully, I was going to step into it and end it on my terms. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like always. I smiled back like nothing had changed. Inside, everything had already burned down. And as I watched her pull out of the driveway, I thought about how safe she must have felt, how untouchable, how certain that I was the last person who would ever surprise her. She was wrong. By the end of that week, I knew more about my wife's secret life than she thought possible, and the scariest part was how calm it made me. I started waking up earlier than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I suddenly wanted the quiet. I needed time alone to think without her voice in my head, without the version of her that still smiled at me over coffee. Every morning, she moved through the house like nothing was wrong. She talked about work stress, deadlines, Michael's leadership, how lucky his company was to have him. She never once noticed that I stopped reacting. I listened. I remembered. I stopped sharing. At work, I functioned better than ever. When your personal life collapses in slow motion, the rest of the world becomes simple. Problems have solutions. Systems obey logic. People don't. During lunch breaks, I sat in my car and went through timelines. Dates. Gaps. Lies that overlapped. Her late meetings aligned perfectly with hotel bookings. Her sudden gym sessions lined up with gaps in her location history. She hadn't even been careful. She just assumed I was blind. The first time I saw a message preview light up her phone while she was in the shower, I felt something close to relief. Confirmation has weight. It presses down on you until denial suffocates. The name wasn't saved. Just a number. A short line. Miss you already. I put the phone back exactly where it was. I didn't read it. I didn't need details to hurt myself. Pain was no longer the point. Control was. That night, she tried to initiate intimacy. Out of nowhere. Her hand on my chest, her voice softer than it had been in months. I froze. Not visibly, but internally. My body reacted out of habit, not desire. I realized then that she wasn't reaching for me. She was checking something. Making sure I was still there. Still hers. I told her I was tired. She looked annoyed, then disappointed, then quickly neutral. That sequence told me more than any confession ever could. 2 days later, I ran into Michael's wife, Emily, by accident. Or at least that's what she thought. Grocery store. Same aisle. Same brand of cereal our kids argued over. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I wondered how many times my wife had smiled at her the same way. We made small talk. Work. Kids. Weather. The lies were so thick in the air I could taste them. When she mentioned Michael working late again, something in her voice cracked just enough for me to hear it. Not suspicion. Exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying a marriage alone. I didn't say anything then. I wasn't ready. But that encounter planted the next step in my mind. I wasn't the only one being played. And that mattered. At home, Rachel started becoming restless. She checked her phone more often. Asked where I was going when I left the room. Asked questions she hadn't asked in years. The irony almost made me laugh. She sensed a shift, but couldn't see it clearly. Predators notice when prey stops acting predictable. One evening, she told me she had a work conference coming up. Out of town. 2 nights. She said it casually, like it was nothing. Like I didn't already know the hotel, the room type, the man waiting for her. I nodded and told her to have a good trip. That night, lying in bed beside her, listening to her breathe, I realized something that scared me more than her betrayal. I no longer wanted answers. I wanted precision. And once that thought settled in, there was no going back. By the time Rachel left for her conference, I had already mapped every move she thought was invisible. I watched her pack like a stranger. Careful with clothes, extra time on makeup, that nervous energy she used to have when we were dating. She hugged the kids a little longer than usual. Kissed me on the cheek, light, quick, like touching something hot. Then she was gone. No tears. No hesitation. Just relief, barely disguised. The house felt different the second her car disappeared. Quieter, but not peaceful. Like a crime scene after the tape goes up. I walked through each room slowly, noticing things I had ignored for years. Photos on the wall that now felt staged. Gifts that suddenly felt transactional. A life built on routine and omission. That night, I didn't sit around imagining what she was doing. I didn't need to. I already knew the order of events. Dinner, drinks, laughter. The same hotel room she'd told me about years ago, saying it was nothing special. The irony wasn't lost on me. It never is, once you start paying attention. Instead, I called Emily. I sat in my car, engine off, phone in my hand longer than I needed to. This wasn't impulse. This was alignment. When she answered, her voice sounded tired, like she'd already been bracing for something she didn't want to name. We talked at first like two normal people. Kids. Work. The usual. Then I said her name the way you do right before a truth you can't take back. She went quiet. I didn't accuse. I didn't explain. I asked one question. Just one. I asked if Michael had told her he was out of town for work. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice had changed. Not anger. Not shock. Recognition. That was enough. We met the next afternoon at a coffee shop neither of us ever went to. Neutral ground. No witnesses who mattered. She looked composed, but her hands trembled when she picked up her cup. I told her everything I knew. Not emotionally. Logically. Dates. Locations. Patterns. I watched her absorb it in real time. Watched the collapse happen behind her eyes. She showed me things too. Messages. Photos. Reservations. Things I didn't want to see, but needed to acknowledge. Together, the story became undeniable. Two people lying to two families while pretending to be pillars of stability. We didn't cry together. This wasn't that kind of moment. We sat across from each other, both realizing the same thing at the same time. This wasn't a mistake. It was a sustained decision. Over and over. For years. Emily asked me what I planned to do. I told her the truth. I wasn't going to expose them publicly. I wasn't going to scream or threaten or beg. I was going to end it cleanly and permanently. Not out of mercy. Out of control. She nodded. I could see something hard settle into her expression. Resolve. She said she wanted the same thing. That's how the partnership started. Not romantic. Not conspiratorial. Just two people who refused to be treated like collateral damage anymore. While Rachel sent me photos from her conference lobby, smiling, I sat at my dining table with legal documents spread out in front of me. Divorce papers, custody drafts, financial disclosures. Everything prepared, precise, unemotional. I didn't rush. I double-checked everything. When you only plan to do something once, you do it right. Rachel called me that night, voice light, slightly drunk. She told me she missed me. Asked about the kids. Asked if I was lonely. I told her the house was quiet. She laughed. Said she'd make it up to me when she got back. I stared at the papers while she talked, thinking about how easily words lose their meaning when they're used as cover. When the call ended, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just confirmation. The next morning, Emily sent me the hotel confirmation Michael had forwarded to Rachel. Same place. Same floor. Same lie. That was when I decided where it would end. Not at home. Not in front of our children. Not in a space where she could cry and rewrite history. It would end where she felt safest. Where she believed she was untouchable. I booked my own room at the same hotel. I didn't tell Rachel I was coming. I didn't need to. The trap wasn't about catching her in the act. It was about removing her ability to deny it. As I packed an overnight bag, I looked around the bedroom we'd shared for nearly 2 decades. I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt clarity. Some places don't deserve mourning. They deserve closure. I left the house just before noon. The drive felt surreal, like I was stepping out of one life and into another without a clean break in between. Somewhere between mile markers, I realized something else. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is loud, messy, emotional. This was consequence. When I pulled into the hotel parking lot and saw her car already there, I didn't hesitate. I checked in calmly, thanked the clerk, and sat down in the lobby with a manila envelope resting on my knee. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. And upstairs, in a room she thought belonged to a lie she controlled, my wife had no idea that the version of me she'd been cheating on no longer existed. I waited almost an hour in the lobby, not because I needed time, but because timing mattered. I watched people come and go. Couples checking in, families arguing quietly, a man arguing on his phone like the world still owed him something. Normal life, running parallel to the moment that was about to fracture mine. The envelope on my knee felt heavier than it should have. Not with paper, but with finality. When the clerk finally called up to the room, I didn't stand. I didn't need to see her run downstairs. I needed her to come down thinking she was still in control. She appeared in the elevator wearing a hotel robe, hair damp, eyes unfocused. For a split second, she didn't recognize me. That second is burned into my memory. The pause. The recalculation. The moment her brain tried to reconcile two realities that couldn't coexist. Then she saw me. Her face drained of color so fast, it almost looked artificial. Shock at first. Then fear. Not guilt. Fear. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice already rising, already defensive. I stood up slowly. I didn't touch her. I didn't raise my voice. I handed the envelope to the man standing beside her. The legal process server Emily and I had arranged days earlier. He confirmed her name, her date of birth. She answered automatically, like a reflex, still staring at me like I was a ghost. When he placed the papers in her hands, something broke. She started talking all at once, asking questions, making statements that contradicted each other, saying my name like it was a lifeline, reaching for my arm, gripping it hard enough to leave marks. The server stepped between us and told her to let go. She cried then. Loud, ugly, panicked. People stared. Phones came out. The illusion shattered in real time. She tried to explain. That's what they always do first. Not apologize. Explain. As if context could disinfect betrayal. I told her one sentence. Just one. You didn't get caught, I said. You got finished. That was the moment her knees buckled. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I didn't wait for Michael to come down. I didn't need the symmetry. I walked out of the hotel and into the afternoon like someone stepping into fresh air after years underground. The drive home was quiet. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, messages, voicemails that shifted from rage to pleading to despair in the span of minutes. I didn't listen to any of them. Not yet. That night, she came home late, earlier than planned. She looked smaller somehow, like someone who had lost their outline. She tried to talk. I told her we'd discuss logistics later. She slept on the couch without argument. The next morning, I told the kids we were going to make some changes. I didn't say why. Not yet. They didn't ask. Children know when something irreversible has happened. Over the next few days, Rachel cycled through every stage of desperation. Apologies, blame, bargaining. She offered therapy, contracts, transparency, her job, her phone, her pride. She cried in front of the kids until I stopped her. She cried in front of my mother until my mother told me I was being cruel. I stayed calm. That unsettled everyone more than anger would have. Michael called me once. Just once. He left a voicemail apologizing, explaining, saying he never meant for it to go this far. I deleted it without listening to the end. Some conversations don't deserve closure. Emily and I spoke often. Not about feelings. About steps. Timelines. Custody. She was precise. Controlled. I respected that. There was no flirting, no emotional bleeding between us. Just mutual understanding and a shared refusal to be broken quietly. Rachel watched that from the sidelines and lost her mind. She accused me of planning revenge, of using Emily, of already replacing her. The irony was almost unbearable. I told her she was free to believe whatever helped her sleep. Weeks passed. The house felt like neutral territory occupied by two enemies observing a ceasefire. She tried to touch me sometimes. I moved away every time. Not because I was strong, but because I knew exactly what that would cost me. One night, after the kids were asleep, she stood in the doorway and asked me something that finally cracked the silence. "Do you hate me?" she said. I looked at her for a long time before answering. "No," I said. "I don't trust you. And that's worse." She sank to the floor. That was when I realized the real punishment hadn't been the papers, or the exposure, or the divorce. It was the certainty that no matter what she did next, she would never again be the woman who didn't have to prove herself. And as I turned off the light and closed the door between us, I understood something else too. This was only the beginning of the fallout. Rachel's desperation didn't fade with time. It sharpened. Once the shock wore off and the legal reality set in, she shifted tactics. The tears became quieter, the apologies more structured. She started therapy and made sure I knew about every session. She left books on infidelity and recovery on the kitchen counter like evidence of effort. She documented her days, her thoughts, her regrets, as if she were building a case for her own redemption. I watched all of it from a distance. Not emotionally distant, strategically distant. Living under the same roof turned into a psychological siege. She learned my routines and tried to intercept them. She woke up earlier to catch me alone in the kitchen. She waited up late to talk when the house was quiet and defenses were low. She asked questions that weren't questions at all, just traps disguised as concern. "Are you sleeping at all? Do you miss us? Do you ever think we could be stronger after this?" Every word was designed to pull me into a future that required me to forget the past. I didn't argue. I didn't engage. I answered with facts when necessary and silence when possible. Silence is brutal when someone is used to being heard. What she couldn't accept was that I wasn't confused. People assumed I was. Friends, family, even my mother. They told me I was reacting out of pride, that 16 years couldn't be erased by one bad chapter. I stopped correcting them. They didn't understand that it wasn't one chapter. It was a parallel book I'd never been allowed to read. Rachel tried another angle. She became generous. Too generous. She offered concessions in the divorce that no lawyer would advise. Assets. Time. Control. It wasn't strategy. It was penance. She wanted to buy absolution with fairness, to prove she wasn't the villain she'd become in her own head. That worried me more than anger would have. Because when someone is willing to give up everything, it means they're preparing to lose you completely. And that kind of fear makes people unpredictable. Meanwhile, Michael's life began to unravel in ways I didn't need to orchestrate. Emily filed quietly, professionally. No public blow-ups. No scenes. Just consequences moving through his life like a slow tide. He lost weight, lost authority, lost the arrogance that had once made him feel untouchable. Rachel noticed. She asked about him once, pretending it was idle curiosity. I told her I didn't know anything. The truth was, I didn't care. What I cared about was my kids. They started asking questions. Small ones at first. Why Mom slept downstairs. Why I seemed tired. Why the house felt tense. Rachel wanted to explain everything in one emotional confession. I stopped her. Some truths need to wait until they can land without breaking things. One night, She crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I came home late from work and found her in our bedroom, wearing something I hadn't seen in years. She'd lit candles, changed the sheets, made the room smell like an apology wrapped in nostalgia. She didn't speak at first. She just looked at me, eyes hopeful, terrified. "I just want you to feel wanted," she said. I felt something then. Not desire, not anger, disgust. Not at her body, but at the timing. At the realization that she was offering me the version of herself I had begged for when it was already too late. I told her to stop. She didn't. She stepped closer. That's when I raised my voice for the first time since everything started. "This isn't love," I said. "This is damage control." She froze. I told her that every touch now felt like a negotiation, every gesture like a transaction. That I didn't want to win her back because I had never lost her. She had left long before I knew it. She backed away slowly, like I'd struck her. The next day, she told her therapist I was emotionally abusive, that my detachment was cruel, that I was punishing her. I laughed when I heard that, not because it was funny, but because it proved something I'd been suspecting. Even now, even after everything, she still saw herself as the center of the story. My pain was just a reaction she wanted to manage. That was the night I decided the divorce wasn't just necessary. It was urgent. Because the longer I stayed in that house, the more I realized something dangerous was happening. I wasn't healing. I was hardening. And if I stayed long enough, I might start to enjoy watching her unravel. That wasn't the man I wanted to become. So I called my lawyer the next morning and told him to move faster. And when I hung up, Rachel was standing in the doorway, listening. Her face told me she already knew. And for the first time since the hotel, she didn't beg. She smiled. That smile stayed with me long after she walked away, because it wasn't hopeful or loving or desperate. It was calculating. That smile changed everything. It wasn't wide. It wasn't dramatic. It was controlled, like she'd just adjusted to a new plan. I realized then that I had underestimated her, not in intelligence, but in resolve. Desperate people panic. Strategic people adapt. Rachel was done panicking. The house shifted after that. The pressure didn't ease, but it changed direction. She stopped chasing me, stopped cornering me, stopped asking questions she didn't want answers to. She became calm in a way that felt artificial, like someone holding their breath underwater and daring themselves not to surface. She started leaving the house more. Not dates, not obvious meetings, just long drives, errands that took hours, sudden commitments she didn't explain. She dressed sharper, not seductive, purposeful, like she was going to work. I didn't ask. I documented. I learned something early in my career. When people go quiet, they're not resting. They're building. I installed software on the home network. Nothing illegal, just visibility, traffic patterns, connected devices, new logins. I wasn't spying on her messages. I was watching behavior. Behavior never lies for long. A new phone appeared on the network one night at 2:14 a.m. Burner model. Cheap. No name attached. It connected twice, both times for less than 3 minutes. That told me enough. She wasn't hiding an affair. She was coordinating. At the same time, the kids' routines started changing. Small changes. Rachel insisted on handling school pickups. She rescheduled dentist appointments without telling me. She asked the nanny to reduce hours. She framed it as family stability. I saw it for what it was. Positioning. She was preparing for a custody fight. That realization settled in my chest like ice. Not because I was afraid to fight, but because I understood the stakes had just escalated. When someone decides to use children as leverage, the moral line is already behind them. I met with my lawyer again. Told him everything. The phone. The behavior shift. The smile. He listened carefully, then said something I hadn't expected. "She's not trying to reconcile," he said. "She's trying to control the narrative." That night, I slept in my office. Not because I was angry, because I needed clarity. And clarity came faster than I expected. 2 days later, the school called me. Not Rachel. Me. They said there was confusion about pickup authorization. That my name had been removed from the emergency list pending verification. They asked if I could come in with ID. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. I drove straight there. Rachel had been there an hour earlier. She'd brought paperwork. Drafts. Not filed, but formatted. She'd told them we were in transition, and that communication had been unreliable. She spoke softly, cooperatively. The kind of tone people trust without realizing why. I corrected everything in 15 minutes. Smiled. Thanked them. Left. Then I sat in my car and felt something crack. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was operational. That evening, Rachel cooked dinner. The kids laughed. The house looked normal enough to fool an outsider. She didn't look at me once. Not even by accident. That was the part that confirmed it. When someone stops checking your reaction, it means they've already decided what they're going to do next. After the kids went to bed, she finally spoke. "We need to talk about schedules," she said. I nodded. She laid out a proposal. Balanced. Reasonable. Shared custody framed as generosity. But woven into the language were assumptions that placed her as the default parent and me as the accommodating one. She didn't push it. She slid it across the table like an offer she expected me to accept. I told her I'd review it with my lawyer. She smiled again. The same one. "You should," she said. "Because things are going to move quickly now." That was the threat. Not loud. Not cruel. Just precise. I waited until she went to bed before I made the call. Not to my lawyer. To a private investigator I'd worked with once, years ago. He owed me a favor. I told him I needed a full background sweep. Financials. Communications. Associates. Everything from the last 18 months. He didn't ask why. He just asked how fast. When I hung up, I stood alone in the dark kitchen and accepted something I'd been resisting. Rachel wasn't trying to survive the divorce. She was trying to win it. And if I didn't move faster than her, I wasn't just going to lose a marriage. I was going to lose control of my own life. I woke up the next morning with a cold clarity. No panic. No anger. Just the sharp, steady pulse of purpose. Rachel was methodical, but I could be smarter. Faster. Harder. The first move had to be mine. Not emotional, not reactive. Tactical. I started by auditing everything in the house that could be leveraged against me. Finances, accounts, emails, files. Every document I could access without alerting her. She had her own system, I knew it, and I needed mine. The kids came down for breakfast. She was cheerful, almost radiant in her calm. It made my stomach tighten. This wasn't a normal morning. Nothing about her ever was anymore. She smiled at me, genuine on the surface, but her eyes were ice. I met her gaze briefly and looked away. No words. Words were her weapon. Silence was mine. Later, I took my first direct step. I sent her lawyer a list of requested documentation. Assets, accounts, anything that might hint at an imbalance. I didn't explain. I didn't negotiate. Just the list. My lawyer called me back 5 minutes later, voice tight with anticipation. He said Rachel's legal team responded immediately. Almost too eagerly, like they were trying to anticipate my next step before I even took it. That afternoon, Rachel came into the office. She leaned against the doorway, arms folded, and said, "I thought we agreed to let the lawyers handle this." Her tone was light, but I felt the threat beneath it. She knew what I was doing. She wanted to see if I would flinch. "I'm just clarifying some points," I said, voice flat. No flinch. No hesitation. Her eyes narrowed. Clarifying or preparing for battle? I didn't answer. I walked past her to my office. Silence followed me like a shadow. That night, I didn't sleep in my room. I stayed at my desk, poring over every possible vulnerability. Ours, hers, everything. Rachel had underestimated one thing. I don't panic. I strategize. And strategy is a long game. The following week, subtle moves became the battlefield. She scheduled appointments with counselors I didn't know existed. Left casual notes about changes in the house, about the kids' schedules. I realized she was testing me, probing for weakness. I didn't respond directly. I cataloged every detail, every slip, every phrase. Then the call came. From the investigator. "I found discrepancies," he said. "Accounts she's been hiding. Transfers that don't match what she reported." My pulse spiked. Not from shock, but anticipation. The game was on. Rachel might be methodical, but I had data now. Real leverage. Something she didn't expect. I didn't confront her immediately. That would have been predictable. I let her think she was still in control. I let her settle into her illusion of power. 2 nights later, I caught her off guard. She was reviewing documents in the kitchen, alone, late. I didn't approach. I watched. Every movement precise. She adjusted her glasses, fumbled a pen, sighed. For the first time in months, she looked tense, vulnerable. I made my move quietly. A subtle question, a small observation. She blinked, paused. Then she smiled, quickly covering it. But the pause was enough. enough to see the cracks forming. By now, the kids had noticed a shift. The tension was palpable, silent, but they sensed it. Rachel tried to remain cheerful, but I knew she was burning through her energy. You can only keep a performance up for so long. The next day, I scheduled a private meeting with my lawyer, the investigator, and my accountant. Every hidden account, every irregularity, every little slip Rachel made in her meticulous planning. We cataloged it, time-stamped it, prepared for confrontation. And I knew the moment was coming. The moment when all her strategy, all her careful manipulation, would crash against the weight of facts. I could feel her watching me, always watching, but now the balance had shifted. I wasn't reacting. I was calculating. And that, finally, gave me the satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. I was no longer the prey. I was the predator. And she had no idea what was coming. I waited until Friday. Kids were at their grandparents', Rachel was working late, and the house was quiet in that eerie, expectant way that always makes me focus better. I had everything lined up, documents, evidence, witness statements, every account of her actions, every trace of deceit neatly filed. No gaps, no mistakes. I called her. "Can you come home?" I said. My voice was flat. No inflection. There was a pause. Then a calm. "Sure." "Why?" "Just to talk," I said. She arrived an hour later, dressed casually, relaxed, pretending like nothing was wrong. She smiled when she walked in. That smile had betrayed her before. It was warm, disarming, meant to manipulate. But I was ready. I didn't flinch. I motioned for her to sit at the dining table. No hugs, no small talk, nothing to soften the edges. She tilted her head, curious. I could see her analyzing my expression, looking for weakness, for hesitation. She wouldn't find any. I laid the files in front of her, each one marked, highlighted, dated. Every hidden bank transfer, every deleted message I recovered, every discrepancy I'd uncovered. "I know everything," I said. Not angrily, not pleadingly, just stating a fact. Her eyes flicked across the documents. She tried to smile. You've been busy," she said. I didn't respond. I waited. Then I leaned forward slightly. "Do you understand what this is?" She shook her head, or tried to. Her voice was quiet. I don't know what you mean." I put my hands flat on the table. "You planned this. All of it. Hidden accounts, secret communications, manipulating schedules, isolating the kids, trying to control every narrative. 2 years of deception, Rachel. And you thought I wouldn't notice?" Her calm cracked ever so slightly. A small twitch near her eye, a shallow breath. She tried to cover it. I watched. Every subtle tell, every hint of panic, it was evidence in itself. "You think this ends with me staying silent?" I asked. "You think this is just some game where you control the board?" Her lips pressed together. She glanced down at the documents, then back up at me. I made mistakes," she said. "I didn't know. I didn't realize." I shook my head slowly. "No, you knew. You always knew. And you counted on me to be blind. You counted on me to be too kind, too soft, too in love to fight back. But that's over." She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. Silence. I let her feel it. The weight of my gaze, the cold certainty in my tone. Then I reached for the divorce papers. I slid them across the table, one by one. "Sign these. Now, before I move to file criminal documentation for the financial manipulation, before I expose everything to the courts. You made this bed. You're going to lie in it." Her hand trembled as she touched the papers. The first time I'd seen her truly uncertain in months. No rehearsed words. No controlled calm. Just fear. "Please," she whispered, almost inaudible. "I can fix this. We can fix this. We can." I cut her off. "No. You can't fix trust you destroyed. You can't rewind 2 years of betrayal. You can't erase the fact that you spent our marriage plotting behind my back." She swallowed hard. Her eyes glistened, but no tears. Not yet. Pride or shame, I didn't care. I just watched. "I'm done negotiating," I said. "Sign them, or I escalate. Full exposure. Every hidden move you made. Everything. Do you understand?" Her fingers hovered over the pen. The air was heavy, thick with tension, each second stretching like hours. And then she finally made her choice. She signed. Slowly. Deliberately. Eyes fixed on the table. I took the papers, stacked them neatly. No celebration. No triumph. Just cold, calculated closure. And as I looked at her, standing there, Defeated yet still defiant, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because she would remember this moment for the rest of her life. And so would I. The predator had struck. And the consequences were only starting to unfold. The day after she signed, everything changed. Not outwardly. On the surface, Rachel moved through the house with the same practiced calm, cooking breakfast, helping the kids, pretending we were normal. But underneath, the air was electric, charged with tension. I could feel her thinking, planning, recalculating every move. I let her. I didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I could see it. I started rearranging my own plans. Meetings with lawyers, the investigator, even discreet contacts with people who could verify every hidden transaction, every whispered lie. I wasn't playing catch-up anymore. I was playing forward. Each step, each move, calculated, deliberate, ruthless in its precision. Then came the first real test. Rachel, under the guise of co-parenting, asked me to sign off on a new school trip for the kids. A trip to an expensive resort. She framed it as best for the kids. The number she quoted for accommodations and activities didn't match reality. It was inflated. She was testing me, seeing if I'd blindly trust her decisions now that she'd complied with the divorce papers. I smiled at her calmly. I'll need to see the receipts and itinerary before approving anything, I said. Neutral. Controlled. No anger. No accusation. Her face tightened. I didn't flinch. I simply waited as she tried to recover, tried to charm her way past me. But I had all the leverage now. Every lie, every manipulation was documented. She had no cover. Then came the calls from her lawyer. They tried to negotiate minor concessions, backdoor arrangements. I declined politely, but firmly. Everything will proceed according to the filings. No exceptions, I told them. My voice carried authority. They didn't push further. They knew I wasn't bluffing. Night fell. Rachel was upstairs with the kids, tucking them in, playing the part of the caring mother. I stayed downstairs, reviewing her financial maneuvers. Every detail I'd gathered revealed a pattern. This wasn't just about the affair. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about control. About proving she could manipulate the system, manipulate people, even manipulate me. I realized something crucial. She underestimated me in the same way she underestimated everyone. She thought I was emotional, reactive, too soft to execute the kind of strategy she was used to wielding. She didn't account for cold calculation, patience, detachment, the ability to turn betrayal into leverage. By the third night, I had traced enough anomalies to know exactly what she expected me to do next. I could anticipate every move, every excuse, every potential attempt at manipulation. And I would counter them all, not publicly, not with drama, but with precision that left no room for her to retaliate. Then came the call from the investigator. You're not going to believe this, he said. He had uncovered communications Rachel had tried to hide. Emails, transfer notes, shadow accounts, connections that implicated her in deliberate financial manipulation beyond just hiding money. I felt a surge of controlled satisfaction. The board was set. Every pawn, every piece, every card on the table. And now it was just a matter of timing. I sat back in my chair and allowed myself a rare, small smile. Not for revenge, not for anger, but because finally, the chaos she had created for 2 years had a counterbalance. She thought she had me, but I had seen every move, felt every threat, and planned every response. And when I decided to strike, it would be surgical. It wouldn't just undo her manipulations. It would expose them, cold and undeniable. She had created a battlefield. I was about to own it, and she wouldn't know what hit her. I called Rachel into the living room one evening, kids asleep upstairs. She came in, smiling faintly, trying to act normal. I didn't return the smile. I gestured toward the table, where everything was laid out. The accounts, the transfers, the emails, the timelines. Every move she had made, documented, verified, undeniable. She froze. I could see the tension ripple through her body. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't in control. This is everything, I said quietly, deliberately. All the games, all the lies, all the manipulation. Every time you thought you could hide it from me, I caught it. And now, I let the words hang in the air. It's all over. Her lips parted, words forming but not coming out. Pride, fear, and disbelief battled across her face. I watched it, cold and detached. I'm done negotiating. I'm done forgiving. I'm done being blind to the truth. You made your choices. Now you live with them. I slid the final stack across the table, the signed divorce papers. No ceremony, no drama. Just the cold, hard fact. She stared at them, then up at me. You can't just. I can. I did. And I will. Everything else is consequences. Every lie you told, every time you tried to manipulate me, every time you tried to control the narrative, it's all exposed. And there's nothing you can do about it. Her eyes glistened with tears she couldn't let fall. Her hands shook as she touched the papers. That small tremor, that hesitation, it was the final crack in her armor. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply watched. I'm leaving, I said, voice low, steady. After this, it's done. You'll live with the truth of what you did. I'll move forward. The kids will move forward. And you'll have to figure out your life without the lies. She swallowed hard. The words hit her like ice water. I could see the panic rising, but I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer excuses. None of that mattered anymore. The next morning, she was gone. I walked through the house, cold, methodical, cataloging what remained, what needed to be divided, what would be mine. Every detail mattered. Every decision was deliberate. The chaos she had tried to orchestrate for years was now under my control. Weeks later, the courts confirmed the divorce, clean and undisputed. Her attempts to manipulate, to delay, to reframe the story, all collapsed under the weight of evidence. My strategy, patience, and cold resolve had dismantled everything she relied on. I didn't look back. I didn't linger on anger or resentment. I focused on the life ahead, the children, their stability, my own dignity. Rachel's betrayal had left scars, but it also left clarity. And in that clarity, I found something she never gave me, control over my own life. I rebuilt my world deliberately, without illusions, without compromise, and without her ever regaining the power she had tried to wield. She had gambled, and I had played the long game. I didn't win for revenge. I won for justice, for my sanity, and for my children. The final truth settled in. Betrayal could destroy a marriage, but cold calculation, patience, and ruthless clarity could restore a man's life in ways betrayal never could touch. And in that truth, I finally breathed again. The chapter was closed. The predator had survived. The game was over. But the memory of her deceit would never leave me. And that, I realized, was the last piece of power I kept for myself.